Kane is in the building.
Welcome to the Sports Podcast that will put you in the zone all the time. Welcome to Pac Sports Zone with me, your host, Peter Pacman Clarke. What up, guys? We're here for another episode of Pac Sports Zone Football today. As you know, every Saturday, as I will be picking all the games just to get you ready for tomorrow, Sunday, all the games. So let's jump right into it with the first game. Obviously, we had the Thursday game that already passed. It actually was a better game than most people thought. The Cleveland Browns and the Cincinnati Bengals. If you listen to Pete's Corner, you know that I actually picked Cleveland to win. Thought they were going to cover. They finished a point short of doing that, but however, did call the win on that. So moving on to week 2, as we start with the games early tomorrow. First game of the week, the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions. Detroit will be without Kenny Galladay. I think that pretty much locks it in that Green Bay will win the game, in my opinion. Green Bay was clicking on all cylinders last week against Minnesota, while Detroit stalled after jumping out to an early lead against the Bears and ended up losing the game. So I think this one is pretty short and sweet to cut. I think the Green Bay Packers win this game, and I think they win it by more than a touchdown. So taking Green Bay in that one. Next game, actually a tough one for me to call, the Chicago Bears and the New York Giants. Reason why it's a tough game to call is because if you watched the game with the Bears last week, they were horrible for 3 quarters and then woke up in the 4th quarter, but it was against a bad team. While you look at the Giants, and they weren't playing horrible, but there were certain points that just completely killed their game. One was Evan Ingram dropping about 3 balls. Another one was the horrible interception that Daniel Jones had when they were driving. That was the key play of that game. And this is with Barkley having the worst game of his career. So you combine Barkley having the worst game of his career with Evan Ingram dropping 2 or 3 key balls, with that big interception that Daniel Jones threw when they were driving and about to make it a 1-score game. And that changed around everything for the Giants. So I think the Giants, and obviously their right tackle, Fleming, was horrible. They just start the rookie at right tackle. Let him earn his bumps because he can't be any worse than Fleming was last week. Fleming was the one person that just got beat every single play. So they got to replace him. Unless he has a miracle this week and has a better game, they got to replace him. But it's a really tough game to call. I think it's going to be one of those games where the Giants can definitely cover the 5.5 point spread, because I think this is going to be a 2-3 point game either way. By picking it right now, gun to my head, I'm still going to have to go with the Bears. I think the Bears will win a close game, but I think it's pretty much a coin flip game. The Giants definitely have a good chance to win this game, especially if they can cut down on the stupid turnovers and they can get Saquon going. If Saquon gets going, I could definitely see this being a high-scoring game with the Giants coming out on top. Moving on to the next game, Tennessee Titans at Jacksonville Jaguars. If you heard Pete's Corner, you heard that the Tennessee Titans have pretty much owned Jacksonville. Derrick Henry, over the past, I think it's 3 games versus Jacksonville, is averaging 144 yards and 2 touchdowns. So that's pretty good, if you don't know. Listen, Jacksonville looked great last week. I called their win. I just think that Titans are really ready to make the next step. Last week was one of those games that if it was the Tennessee Titans of a year ago or Tennessee Titans of 2 years ago or any of the Tennessee Titans in the past 5 years, they would have lost that game. You got a kicker that missed 3 field goals and an extra point, and you still found a way to win the game. On the road, that shows how good of a team you are. So I think the Titans are actually showing that they're a good team by winning the games that they're not playing well in. I think that even without A.J. Brown, I think Corey Davis stepped out big time. Jonnu Smith stepped up and scored a touchdown last week. And Derrick Henry, even though he had a good game in terms of yards, he had a bad game in terms of yards per carry. I expect him to be better since he owns Jacksonville. So I expect the Titans to win this game straight up. I think they'll actually cover the spread, but in this situation, I'm just talking about straight up. So I got Tennessee winning that game. Moving on, Dallas Cowboys, who was one of the biggest disappointments last week against the Atlanta Falcons. Just bad coaching by McCarthy, not kicking the field goal, tying the game up. They went for it. They didn't make it, and they lose the game by 3 to the Rams. He's got to have better coaching decision than that. That's That's not the type of coaching decision you want. That's a preseason rookie coach type decision that McCarthy made. So he's going to have to be better. The whole offense is going to have to be better. The offensive line, most importantly, is going to have to be better because Dak had to run around a little bit more than he should in the first game of the year. As a whole, their offensive line is good. So they're going to, hopefully Tyron Smith, who was hurt on Thursday in practice with neck problems. Hopefully he is able to play because without him, things could break down quickly. Atlanta is the team of names, but no substance. So I have no confidence in Atlanta winning games, especially against a good team or solid team. So I'm going with Dallas to win this game. I think they'll even cover too, but I'm going to do 4.5, but I'm going to go with Dallas to win the game straight up. Moving on, Tampa Bay. Tom Brady back again for part 2 after having a bad first game. And listen, there's a lot of pressure on him, despite what ESPN trying to suck up to Brady said earlier, where the most pressure on the quarterback that lost last week, who has the most pressure. And they're talking about Phillip Rivers and Carson Wentz. And yeah, there's a little bit of pressure on Wentz and a little bit of pressure on Rivers, not much to be honest, but you're talking about Carson Wentz, who's picked to finish second in the division, and you have Phillip Rivers, who's also picked to finish second in the division, and threw 23 touchdowns and 20 interceptions last year. So his expectations aren't that high. Tom Brady expectations are high because teams are already picking them to go to the Super Bowl before he even laced up his first Tampa Bay boots. So his first Tampa Bay cleats. So they have all the pressure. He has the pressure. He has to be better this game, especially against a team in Carolina who isn't good. So he's going to have to put up a good game. Don't throw another 2 interceptions. Don't make it look like New England protected you your last couple of years with a bunch of checkdowns. So they're not going to have, it doesn't sound like they're going to have Chris Godwin. So that's going to lower one of his weapons. It's going to be pretty much Mike Evans and a bunch of tight ends, good tight ends, and Gronkowski, OJ Howard, but a bunch of tight ends. So let's see if Brady will be able to bounce back. I think he will, and I'm picking Tampa Bay to win this game. I think they'll be able to cover the 9.5 point spread, but I'm definitely picking Tampa Bay to win this game and Brady to have a bounce back game. Next game, I'm very surprised at actually the line because Indianapolis is favored by 3 over Minnesota. I think it should be flipped and Minnesota should be favored. I'm picking Minnesota to win this game outright. I think Minnesota is the better team. I think the Colts are a bit overrated. I have no confidence in Phillip Rivers. And being with your new team, you always have to look at 2 things. 1, rookie quarterbacks, and 2, quarterbacks that switch systems because they went through a different offseason. We saw that with Brady last week also. The teams that went to different teams, quarterbacks, even established quarterbacks that went to different teams, struggled a little bit last week. So, Brady threw 2 interceptions. Rivers threw 2 interceptions. Now, Newton ran a lot. He's not the heavy thrower that Rivers and Brady are. So that was a little bit of a difference in the change there. But you saw the guys that went to new teams had a little bit issues last week. And we saw that with Phillip Rivers. Minnesota is a team that played bad. They played against a good team in Green Bay. One of the top teams in the league in the NFC last year. So I'm not going to kill them too much over it. Even though, as all of you know, I'm not really a fan of Kirk Cousins. am a fan of Dalvin Cook, and I think the Minnesota Vikings will win that game against the Indianapolis Colts. Moving on to the next game, Los Angeles Rams, who did look okay last week, despite not really running the ball great. Malcolm Brown had a good game, and they're going against the Philadelphia Eagles, who I thought should have won, and they just played horrible. Carson Wentz was sacked 8 times. He had 2 interceptions. He played very bad last week. He's a veteran now, and he's played at a top tier MVP caliber before. He's got to get rid of the ball much faster than he is. Now, he's getting a lot of help back this week as Miles Sanders is supposed to play. But the biggest help will be Lane Johnson back on the offensive line, and that was a big issue for the Eagles last week. So I expect him to bounce back. Even though the Rams are a 1 point favorite, I think the line is already switched. It was Rams -1 earlier in the week. I think last time I checked yesterday, it was the Eagles now favored by 1. I think the Eagles will win this game outright. Moving to the next game, the other Pennsylvania team, Pittsburgh Steelers go against Denver. Now, I think Denver, last time I looked, the spread was 7.5. I think Denver will cover the 7 point spread. I think this will be a 3 or 4 point game. I still have to say the Steelers will win because I just think they're purely the better team. but I just don't think that they're going to blow them out 10 by 7, by more than 7, 10 points, 14 points. I think this will be a close game. Denver proved last week. Now, they got some breaks, obviously, because of the missed field goals, but Denver was missing their wide receivers. KJ Hamler will play this week. He didn't play last week. Jerry Jeudy, that was his first game, and he had to be the number one wide receiver because Cortland Sutton was out. A decision has not been made on Cortland Sutton yet, and if he plays, then I don't want to pick Denver to win, but I think they'll be very close whether Sutton plays or not. But even if he does play, it won't be a full complement of snaps. So I'm going to have to stick with Pittsburgh to win this game. I just don't think they'll cover the 7.5 point spread, but Pittsburgh, in my opinion, will win this game. Moving on, San Francisco 49ers, the New York Jets. This one is pretty straightforward. I don't even know why the spread's only 7. Probably because San Fran didn't look great last week, but they played against an upcoming team in Arizona. San Fran, I think, is going to demolish the Jets. You saw how bad they looked versus Buffalo. They were down 3 scores before you can blink an eye, and Buffalo kind of just cruised the rest of the way. I think San Fran will do the same thing. I think they'll run the ball down their throat, and if the Jets have any pride at all, they'll find a way to keep this under a 14-point loss. So we'll see what happens. We have seen the Jets pull off some weird wins in the past. And we have seen that overall in the NFL because the NFL, you take a team too lightly and the other team can come back and shock you. So anything can happen one game, any given Sunday in the NFL, but I'm not going to be betting against this 49ers here. So I'm taking the 49ers to beat the New York Jets and pretty much solve that problem of their no loss in week 1. Next up, Buffalo Bills against the Miami Dolphins. Buffalo is favored by 5.5. I don't think the Dolphins played that well last week. Fitzpatrick is pretty much another start in week 1 away from handing the ball off to Tua to be the starter. He was just really bad last week. That was not what we saw out of him for most of the year last year. We're going to have to see if he can turn it around. Even if he does turn it around, then we'll have a close game. If he doesn't turn around, I think the Buffalo defense can end up leaving this game with 2-3 interceptions, and we can have to see a few more turnovers on maybe a fumble, and it could get ugly because Buffalo's defense is very good and Miami's offense is very shaky. We have to see if Devontae Parker plays as his time was limited out there. Very surprised that Matt Breida didn't get more time as they went with Ballage, actually, is Kalen Ballage, which is surprising to me because he's not good at all. Jordan Howard should be the top dog. He should get the most carries. The change of pace back should be Matt Breida. I don't know why they swayed away from that last week, but we will see if that continues or if they'll actually do the smart thing and run with those two. But I just think Buffalo's just a better team. Even if they don't cover the spread, I think they will win the game. I can see a scenario where the Miami Dolphins will win the game if Fitzpatrick has one of his Fitzmagic moments and has 3 touchdowns and Devontae Parker plays and Jordan Howard has a good game. Miami has talent. This isn't like the Miami team of last year. They actually have a lot of talent. The problem is we got to see it. We got to see it on the field. They have a lot of new players and no time to really get the chemistry down. This is preseason for all these teams. The first 2 to 3 games are going to be preseason because normally in the first game of the preseason, you're playing like 2 drives, so it's nothing. Second game, you're playing around a half, so you start to really get into it. Third game, then you're playing into the third quarter. Some teams cut it a little short, but you're playing into the third quarter. So as of then, you've played maybe about 5.5 quarters after the third game, and most of the starters don't play in the fourth game. So if you're talking about 5.5 quarters, that's 2 games. So after this week, from week 3, some maybe week 4, you'll start to see people start clicking the way they're clicking. If you look last week, there was a big lack of 300-yard games, and we saw so many 300-yard games last year, and we didn't really see any last week. So, and we already see it started off with Joe Burrow on Thursday going off for 300 yards. So as the season gets on, these arms are going to get a little warmed up. The chemistry is going to get a little better, and you're going to see more yardage in the air. But as of right now, not really that much, and we'll see if that turns around. But going back to the game, as I said, the Buffalo Bills, I think they'll win this game. In my opinion, they win it by a touchdown or around 10 points, but Buffalo's going to win the game straight up. On to the Arizona Cardinals and the Washington no-name team, the Washington football team. I'm not trying not to mess up this time like I did last week, but Washington played great last week. I already told you that they had a good front seven. I didn't think they were going to finish off the game. I mean, they were down 17-0. They were not supposed to come back. Philly pretty much played Washington into coming back in that game because they did nothing after they took the big lead. I don't know if they'll be able to do that this time. If they get down 2 scores, I think Arizona could start piling on a little bit. I don't think they will blow them out just because the Washington's defense is so good. But I do think that Arizona will win by 7 to 10 points. So, but this is a game that I want to bet. So regarding betting, I want to bet on this game. But straight up, I think Arizona is going to win this game. I don't think Peyton Barber, who didn't play well last week, he just stumbled into 2 touchdowns. He won't be able to do that again. Maybe you'll see a little bit Bryce Love. Maybe you'll see even more of Antonio Gibson, who I think will be their main guy because they'll be down most games. So I think Antonio Gibson is the guy to have in fantasy for their running back crew. Not Peyton Barber, but I just don't see them winning this week. I think Arizona, who's coming off a great win against San Francisco last week, I think they're going to go to 2-0 and start surprising some teams. People are going to start looking at them. I mean, they have a great offense. You had DeAndre Hopkins, who is very happy to go from one good quarterback to another good quarterback. One that actually looks at him. So Deshaun Watson looked at him all the time. He had great games. Now Kyler Murray's looking at him, and he's had a great game last week. We'll see if that continues because, as I say, I still want to see a little bit more out of Kyler Murray. And we'll see if the other wide receivers, Christian Kirk and Larry Fitzgerald, get a little bit more of the share this week. But I do think Arizona finds a way to win that game. Baltimore Ravens, after their impressive stomping of the Cleveland Browns last week, now they go to Houston. And I think it's going to be another stomping, to be honest. I think Baltimore is just going to run the ball down Houston's throat. We saw what they did when they went against Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and he had over 100 yards against them. I think it'll be the same. I think Lamar Jackson scores a rushing touchdown this week. I think Ingram scores a touchdown. I think you can see J.K. Dobbins score a touchdown. I just think they're really going to run the ball down their throat. You may see a goal line play action that goes to Mark Andrews again, but I think that the Ravens are going to handle this pretty handily. I would say that they're going to win this game, I would say by plus 14 points. The spread right now is 7, so I would jump on that. So I'm going to say Baltimore wins easily against the Houston Texans. Next up, defending champion Kansas City Chiefs going against the Chargers. Chargers got a good win last week, but it was against a team that, listen, Cincinnati definitely had a chance to win that game, as we saw AJ Green with the push off at the end. And then we also saw at the last, the field goal miss as time was running down that could have tied the game. Cincinnati just blew that game. Chargers, they more blew that game than Chargers really won that game, but it's 1-0 in the record book. So Chargers are 1-0, but the Chiefs were ultra impressive and they had 10 days. Now they've had 10 days rest. I think they can have another 30 plus 40 point game. So it's just going to be too much for the Chargers to keep up. I think this one is pretty easy to call as the Kansas City Chiefs improve to 2-0 and as in their run for back-to-back titles. Sunday night game, really good game. Seattle and New England. New England is pretty much trying to ride Cam right now as he had, I think, 74, 75 yards, 2 touchdowns rushing last week. Listen, we know this is what Cam does. If he's healthy and he's obviously motivated because he got cut by Carolina, so he's obviously motivated to show people what he can do. He can do this. He can win you games with his legs. Like he doesn't have to have a good passing game and he can still win the game. But speaking of impressive passing games, Russell Wilson, I think it was 31 of 35. Ultra impressive game. He just dominated last week. I thought they were going to win. I didn't know it was going to be that dominated of a win, but I did think they were going to win. Seattle is looking really good right now. They're looking like they're a championship type team. And let's see now. Now, obviously, last week Atlanta is not an opponent that you're going to be scared of because, like I said, I'm not really afraid of Atlanta. This one should be a little bit closer. I expect New England to run the ball, use a little bit more of the clock, and that's something that Atlanta just doesn't do. And we'll see now if Seattle will be able to take advantage of all their opportunities when they get it. So I'm going to say that Seattle wins the game. I'm going to say they win it by maybe 6 points, 4 to 6 points. I don't think they'll win it by a blowout, and I don't think New England will cover the 4-point spread. But it can go either way. This is a really good game for Sunday night because it's really going to chance to see where the New England offense is going, how Cam Newton is going with Joss offense, and what's their ceiling, what's their limit. Edelman is questionable for playing. N'Keal Harry, we'll see if he can get a connection going with Cam. They have 2 rookie tight ends, so that's kind of up in the air. It's going to be the Cam show. That's what New England's going to be. It's going to be the Cam show going against Russell Wilson and all his young wide receivers, Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf and all those guys. So I think Seattle has a little bit too much firepower, so I'm going to go with Seattle, but it's going to be a good game. Definitely a must watch on Sunday night. Monday night game, the game that was supposed to open up the new stadium that I'm calling the Death Star in Las Vegas. The Las Vegas Raiders against the New Orleans Saints. And I just think the Saints are going to come out and put up a lot of points to this game because, one, that's just what they do. They always score a lot of points. Kamara seems healthy this year, which he apparently wasn't last year. And 2, Breeze didn't have a good game last week. And Breeze is one of those guys that's a perfectionist. And I think he's going to really put into it to try to really have a really good game this week, put last week out of his mind. And that's going to awaken the wide receivers. Now, they won't have Michael Thomas, despite a couple reports saying he's trying to play. I don't think they'll have Michael Thomas this week. I don't think they'll have Michael Thomas next week. We don't know how long that injury is going to last, but they still do have a couple people. They have Traquan Smith out there. They have Emmanuel Sanders out there. So they still do have wide receivers that they'll be able to do something with. And obviously, you got Alvin Kamara in the backfield. And Breeze makes his tight ends better. You got Jared Cook there. They still have weapons. Michael Thomas is a great wide receiver, but Drew Brees can still roll with what he has out there. So I expect him to score a lot of points. Traquan Smith is a good pickup in fantasy if you want to have a sneaky wide receiver pick. Emmanuel Sanders, if he's somehow out there, that's definitely another pick that you should pick up. But I'm going to go with New Orleans I think they'll cover the 6-point spread. I actually really like that pick. That's my favorite pick of the week. But with that being said, that definitely means that I really think New Orleans is going to win this game. So another week. Last week was a good week with picks, not only with the spread, but straight picks. Hopefully we can continue it again. I do track how I'm doing in terms of the picks and everything. So I will be letting you know next week what my record is after 2 weeks. Obviously, if you're paying attention, you'll see that it's been pretty good so far. So with that said, next week, we got obviously the week 3. You have another slate of games that'll be really good. This week you have Pack Sports Zone on Tuesday. They'll go over the NBA, go over the playoffs as we're in the Eastern and Western Conference Finals. Right now, Miami is up 2-0. They're playing right now. I'm not really checking out the game, but I'll be checking it out as soon as this telecast is over. Lakers took a 1-0 lead on theirs. We'll be talking more about that on Tuesday as we get into the series. And then obviously on Thursday, we're almost done with baseball season. Got to get ready for the playoffs. So I'll be talking a lot about that on Thursday. But every Saturday, I'm going to give you the picks. If there's any breaking news, I'll let you know. And I'm your host, Peter Pacman Clarke. Thanks for listening. Pack Sports Zone. See you guys next week.